Hi everyone. It's not a museum at all, and it's not a tourist site at all. So Alec did almost the unimaginable, and I'm also sharing bits of the videos from my camera roll too, because I was able to visit it only once, and I'm a licensed tour guide. So it's not about being a tour guide; it's just about your luck and being able to pull the strings. So, where are we? We are in the downtown. We are not far from the Nevsky Avenue. It's a quiet street, however, and also this street has tons of houses, a lot of buildings, a lot of beautiful houses, tenant houses, private mansions, which we definitely need to explore because this street we haven't really explored well enough. Well, just for example, you may remember the one of the tours I did on the treasures of the Romanovs and Russian aristocracy after the revolution, and there was a tour about these hidden treasures. And I shared with you the story. Sharon, thank you so much for the coffees. I shared with you the story. Also, Robert, thank you so much. Um, about about the biggest hidden treasures discovered in St. Petersburg in 2000s. Well, it happened in this very street. So it's a big deal. So we will be definitely walking down the street in the near future, I promise. So the back in the imperial times, the street was called Sergeyevskaya, and now it's the Chernyshevsky Street. Well, it's just really 5 minutes away from the Nevsky Avenue and from some of the main squares. That's the house we're going to visit today. It's not really a palace, but trust me, it is. Okay, maybe not in size, but okay, you just have to trust me on this, okay? And here we are. So, as I said, it's not a museum. It now belongs to the St. Petersburg Law School, and sometimes classes are held there and also all sorts of events, for example some academic gatherings, lectures, and stuff like that. So it's an educational facility. I mean, it's probably a bit too opulent for the educational facility, but well, I don't know. So to be able to get into this house, I actually needed to pull the strings. I have a friend, so he's a lawyer and he graduated from this law school. So he just kind of put in the his foot in the door for me, and I was able to access and just made a little. I wouldn't have been allowed to bring you there for a live stream, which I really wanted to, but no. But from time to time, once in several months, only a limited number of people are allowed to access it for a tour, and well, Alec was able to do it for us. So I guess we are very fortunate. So let's explore the house. However, you may have noticed that in the photographs, in old photographs, the house has two bay windows, uh, but not anymore because in during the Second World War times, a bomb hit it and one of bay window collapsed. And it was decided not to restore it. I guess it's just because it wasn't really the time, and that now the house looks a little different. This house also was caught on camera before the war in the early 20s. There was a big rally in St. Petersburg, or well, Leningrad at that time. It was something related to the party, and all the slogans and banners were all over the cars. You see the okay, you see Stalin, you see of course, Kirov, who was a very loyal friend to Stalin, and he was in charge of Leningrad during Stalin reign, and then he was killed, and and this is when, just a second. Um, One of the viewers is not able to access this. I don't think I can send a direct link at the moment. Okay, just give me a second. Oh, maybe I can. Okay. Yeah, sometimes Eventbrite gives us really, really hard time. I totally understand. Yep. So in this, and we can see at least the house in full beauty. Yeah, Stalin kind of really, you see, so there's one bay window missing right to the right. So it used to be symmetrical, not anymore. I don't really notice this, but I mean now it's kind of okay. Imagine someone with OCD, that would be horrible. But what can I say? Yeah, so which means that one interior went, well, kind of disappeared, unfortunately, but we have some photographs to make up. So what is this? Who this house belonged? It belonged to Varvara Kelch. Actually, she was Varvara Bazanova, and this is one of the two photographs of her that exist. This is her together with her daughter Yulia. And this house belonged to her and to her husband Alexander Kelch. So Varvara Bazanova. Varvara Bazanova Kelch was her name when she married Alexander Kelch, and this house belonged to them, and they happen to be one of the most influential, rich, and also generous families in the Russian Empire and in Saint Petersburg. I doubt it. Um, Anyone has ever heard this name, but if you're interested in the history of Faberge, definitely, well, you must have heard this name. You must have. They were some of the most loyal and frequent clients of Faberge, and they would shop. Mary, thank you so much, Mary Beth, for the tips. And they would shop a lot with Faberge, a lot. There's a lot of connections with them. So this is the family of Varvara Bazanova. Next to her, in the center of the photograph, you see her mother and also cousins. She was the only daughter in the family, so she inherited squillions of rubles from her father because her father owned a couple of gold mines in Siberia, as well as several salt um, manufacture sites, and also the sable fur manufacture site. All of that in Siberia, in Irkutsk, around Lake Baikal, and so that area. And so he had squillions of money, and she inherited them. But she was from a merchant family, and merchants from Siberia, well, it wasn't good enough. Even if you had squillions, you still were not good enough. So she married Alexander Kelch. Well, originally she married Nikolai Kelch, who were representatives of quite impoverished but still very aristocratic dynasty in St. Petersburg, coming from Germans that first came to St. Petersburg in the 1700s and the 18th century. And then after they got married, they built themselves this house. You can see the dates, 1896. And from the other side, there is 1897. So it took them less than, well, a little bit more than 1 year, in fact, to build this house. They bought this plot of land from the Greece council, and they took down the old building that had been here and built this new one in this neo-Renaissance style. And well, it looks amazing from the outside, but you can't even begin to guess what it looks from the inside. And we're going to explore it on this tour. But first, I would like to also take you to the courtyard. And again, the same story. The buildings are placed one next to another, and there's no way even to go around. There's no way to even, I don't know, like peek into keyhole or something, like what's in there. So this is always a big, big bummer. It's one of the most uh, desirable places to visit, and unfortunately, it's not so easy to do. So one of the architects who was invited, who was hired to build the new house for the newlyweds, was Karl Schmidt, who was a distant relative to Karl Faberge, Peter Karl Faberge. And we don't know whether Faberge whether Faberge recommended Kelch's services of Schmidt or vice versa. I think it was the first option, but they really liked what Schmidt created for them. Schmidt was mainly involved in the design of the courtyard, and well, from the outside, from the main facade, it's neo-Renaissance. Here it is neo-Gothic style, and I really like this colorized photograph. It looks like it's somewhere taken in, I don't know, in Oxford, right? Something like that, but it's not. And it may look like a small chapel, maybe. So did they have a small Gothic chapel in the backyard? Actually, this is the horse stables. Believe it or not, but this is just stables, and there's even a sign to it. But well, we will get to that. We will get to that. This is incredible, right? So there were actually two courts. There was one garden, and then behind the horse stables, there was also the kind of the service yard. Uh, at some point, actually nobody knows what this sculpture is doing here because in the old photographs you do not see the sculpture. And it looks like someone at some point during the Soviet times brought this sculpture and placed it there in the courtyard. Uh, and people started calling it Leningrad Venus, the Venus of Leningrad. This is the Soviet photograph. This is not the photograph from the Kelch times. So it's a good question. And then also the sculpture just disappeared. I like this one very much. At first, I didn't even notice this guy sitting on the wooden boxes, but now I see. So this is a very, very Leningrad symphony kind of Leningrad thing. What can I say? Uh, yeah. And the house is absolutely whimsical. You see all the gargoyles, you see all these magical creatures, uh, beasts of all sorts. And well, it looks like you are somewhere in Cologne or well, somewhere in Germany. Well, in fact, Celts did come from Germany anyway. However, they were born in Russia, but they still wore that name. And this is the horse. So in fact, the entrance to the horse stables would be from the next courtyard over there. And you will always see also coats of arms uh, placed here and there. So it was very important for Varvara Bazanova to show off the coat of arms of her family because she felt that, right? So she was a merchant, so she didn't have a status, and they were not, even though they had a lot of money, like a lot of money. Um, and thank you so much for the coffee. It wasn't enough because Saint Petersburg in these aristocratic circles they needed a status. So she married Kelch, Nikolai Kelch first of all for the status, and then she could display that coat of arm everywhere, and you will see a lot of this coat of arms in the house too. This second courtyard looks a lot more modest because it was mostly used by the servants, ones who took care of the horses and everything. And it already looks more Art Nouveau-ish to me, which was okay. It was the time, right? We were approaching the turn of the 20th century. Uh, so uh, there were a lot of good photographs also online, so I'm using a lot from the open sources. And I was only able to film very, very few videos myself, and I took some photos too, so I'm sharing them. But Oleg managed to get in. You needed to provide all your passport details. You needed to enroll several months ahead, and you just needed to be, I mean, just needed some luck as well to be able to fit the very small guest list. Yeah. Anyway, the obviously, well, now the building looks amazing. It has been restored. After the war, for some time, it was in a very bad condition, but not anymore. So now, with lots of private investment and well, St. Petersburg Law School is well, it has enough money. I suppose. But well, also that's because this is department. This is the department where a lot of politicians come from as well. But we are not focusing here on the current situation. Let's think about the times back then, turn of the 20th century. So you are in the main staircase and just just see this. Look at the staircase. Look at all these arabesques. Look at all these designs and this opulence. And this is just a staircase, right? It's just that. So the staircase, the entire staircase was delivered from Moscow. I'm just saying, because in Moscow had the best marble workshop, the best marble, Carrara marble. Obviously, didn't come in one piece, as you can see. It's not one piece, but you get the point, right? On the walls, the artificial marble and a lot of designs and also sculptures. And yes, so the staircase takes the entire all the floors and everything you see in this house, apart from the uh, one area with this non-existent bay window, that's new. The rest is original. And well, I think the house was really spared. I think it was just amazingly lucky that only one bay window was damaged, and they could have restored it, but I assume it wasn't really a priority back then. Now, from both sides of the staircase, you see these gentlemen over here. They don't look like atlases, right? It would only be natural to see some Greek gods or something, right? Holding the sky, holding the porch or something, or at least something, right? But no, that was not the case. Cindy, thank you so much um for the coffees. I'm so glad that you have been able to join the tour, considering everything you've been going through. Well, but these gentlemen, they're kind of a mystery, and the scholars say that they are actually two brothers of the Kelch family, Nikolai and Alexei. Alexander, sorry, not Alexander Kelch. The story has it that Varvara Bazanova first married Nikolai, and it was definitely an arranged marriage. It was all purely, I would say, political, right? But she became a widow like several years after the marriage. And this is when the younger brother of Kel, Alexander, just came up with an idea to marry him so she could still have the status and everything. And she said yes. She married the younger brother, and they didn't live happily ever after, but they lived happily at least for several years until the time when they decided to separate, and Alexander went to Moscow because they also had a very big house in Moscow. But before that, they had about 5 years together, and immediately after marriage, Kel, her husband, was appointed in charge of all the property that Bazanova had, and she had dozens of palaces, several factories and manufacture facilities in Europe, uh, and she needed a manager. So her husband was her manager as well. He managed everything. And it was kind of the marriage of convenience in many ways. She had the status, he had the money, but he also wasn't very good enough. And look at all these lions, so all these dragons. So it's kind of it also feels sometimes that you are in Hogwarts in a way. Well, I guess she wanted to create this sort of a fairy tale, but again, it's fairy tale and monarchy. It's fairy tale and aristocracy. Maybe she imagined herself as I don't know, a noble lady, and she lived in a beautiful castle, and she needed I don't know, a knight on a white horse, or maybe on a white beast to come and rescue her. I don't know. We know so little about Varvara Bazanova. We know very little about her. And again, such a she was considered a very beautiful woman and a very rich one. So one would assume that there must have been made a lot of photographs, but we only have two. So it's very sad. And this is already the upper level of the staircase. So for several years, things were running smoothly, and the house little by little was filled with even more gorgeousness. For example, on the in the upper section of the house, on the staircase, there are three niches that are empty now. But there used to be these three sculptures, statues. I will tell you about the artist who created those statues a little bit later. That's an interesting story. But in the Soviet times, after the war, they survived, but it was decided to move them elsewhere, and these statues found themselves eventually in the town of Rostov, which is in the south of Russia. They are now exhibited in one of the local museums, but everyone knows where they are from. I mean, look at this stained glass roof, just to add more daylight to the whole space of the uh, to the whole space of the staircase. Just look at these designs. I I'm not sure whether it survived the Second World War. Probably not. So it looks like it's been restored, but uh, it looks amazing. So that's just what I'm going to say. And some old photographs. Luckily, they were taken photographs of the place, of the house. And by the way, so this is the trademark of Georgi List, who was who was in charge of the marble workshop in Moscow, and all that was delivered from Moscow and placed in the house. That was the best marble workshop, the best. And we have some photographs. So you could see the empty niches. So those are the niches for those three statues that are no longer here. And there were also views of Tuscany. We don't know whether Varvara had been to Tuscany prior to that or she wanted to, but we know that well, after first she separated from her husband. So these are the two niches. So there's one more niche over on the other side. After they just separated and he went to Moscow, she decided to leave the city, and left. She left her daughter with Kelch and left for Paris. And she would never come back to St. Petersburg again. Just like that. Nobody knows the reason behind that, but she left a notice. We don't know the details. Nobody knows the details. All that we know that in that letter that she left for her husband, she said that she always loved Nikolai, the elder brother, the late uh, elder brother, but she never liked the younger Kelch. So I guess that pretty much explains the reason for her departure, and so she never returned. But how did she leave, and what did she take with her? Closer to the end of the tour, we're going to visit a very special room. We're going to talk about the riches that the family had. But even now, even just looking at the staircase, I think you already have the idea of what this family had. By the way, this is the servant staircase. Today, we have already done one tour of St. Petersburg from the times of Fyodor Dostoevsky, so it's mid and the second half of the 19th century. So, I talk a lot about, winding alleyways, inner courtyards and everything, and the service staircases, where only servants and footmen would use. So we kind of see the guts of St. Petersburg. And this house also had its guts, but those are a lot more beautiful guts than we have seen in some of the areas. But yes, obviously there would be a lot of people who served the family, and they also had the entire courtyard, the second courtyard, but it looks a little bit different, slightly less modest than what we have seen on the other tour. The pink drawing room. So this is one of the first rooms that you see as you enter the second floor or the upper floor. And it's this house is purely eclectic. The facade is neo-Renaissance, the courtyard is neo-Gothic, and then you see this very eclectic Egyptian ladies. Seemingly Egyptian. They look like they are Egyptian, and also the on the platform right on the ceiling you have the scene of gods and goddesses. Um, that's an interesting thing over here. I'm going to show you, and also some sculptures, some decorations on the dessus de porte, which is the decoration of the doorway, French word. I hope I pronounce it right. So, for example, this one, well, we don't really know what the name is, but you see, well, the different animals. So what's going on? That's a good question. And there are a lot of questions with regards to the interpretation of the house, like what what happened here, what was going on. Some people claim that this was in a way. Um, Maybe it represented the relationships between Kelch and Bazanova, and maybe she was not loyal to him, or maybe she was having she had an affair. A lot of questions and no answers. So the story of their life, the story of their family life, is um, unclear and remains a mystery. Uh, Also, with regards to what happened next and how what happened to Kill, I mean to the husband. Some photographs of the rooms that are no longer here. So since they were two symmetrical, there were two bay windows, so there were sections, symmetrical sections from the both sides, and that part. The one of the bay windows were destroyed, and there were some opulent rooms too. This is the photograph from the Soviet period, well, before the war, and it's the drawing room was mentioned in multiple memoirs. So Varvara Bazanova was a socialite, so it's not like she was a private person, but yeah, obviously they absolutely had to. They were obliged to host parties, to take part in charity events, and Bazanov. The late father of Varvara Bazanova and Varvara herself and her mother were involved in a lot of charity projects, helping the families and children in Siberia most and foremost, like because they were from Irkutsk, which is the town very close to Lake Baikal. And I guess you have an idea. So this is the Rococo room, the neo-Rococo, obviously. And every room had its own distinct style, quite different. And that was just a fad, a very big fad. So as I said, they purchased the house from a Greek consul who had his private house on this plot of land. They tore it down. They tore it down and built a new one, and it cost the plot of land cost 300,000 rubles, which it's hard to calculate, but the average salary of the, let's say, a teacher or young beginner professor was about 20 to 30 rubles. I mean, old money. So you kind of have an idea, right? Um, Even the plot of land, how much the plot will cost, and then the construction. And then we know that once Schmidt was hired to do the job in the courtyard, and he also charged quite a lot, then, around the same time, Varvara Bazanova became a client of Karl Faberge. And it looks like Varvara Bazanova was even the supplier because Karl Faberge used a lot of gold. And for some reason, Faberge by that time had already had, clientele base, and obviously there were a lot of jewelers that worked for him. But uh, Well, there was also line, there was a waiting list because still it took a long time for the private commissions to come through and the projects to be finished. But for some reason, Varvara Bazanova Kelch was able to get all the eggs on time, and her orders, her commissions would come through and will be completed and supplied to her very quickly, ahead of many other orders. Obviously, the priority will be given to the Romanovs, but you kind of have an idea. And there are some other, and there are some other theories, well, some other things that kind of also makes us think she must have been not just an ordinary client of Faberge. But let's explore this marble hall. Well, it's called White Marble Hall. Yeah, the walls are kind of pistachio green, but look at this fireplace. I have never seen a more beautiful fireplace in my entire life. And it was created in Saint Petersburg by, well, nobody knew this artist before. She was just a graduate from the Imperial Academy of Fine Arts, and she all of a sudden was given this amazing commission. She was Maria Dillon, and she was the first woman sculptor to have graduated from the Imperial Academy of Fine Arts, and she was a Jew. That was a big deal. And well, you are just a graduate. You don't, well, you don't expect to be given commission by one of the richest families in the country. Yet she was. I guess Varvara Bazanova sympathized with, well, it was kind of a women's solidarity too. But Dillon did a great job. And she charged quite a lot of money. She charged according to some papers about 70,000 rubles, and you remember, right? So about 300,000 was a plot of land. It's not even, and yes, there is also a signature and the year. So it took a little longer for the fireplace decoration to be ready, but it was. And Maria Dillon sent the descriptions and the illustrations of the fireplace to Italy, and in Italy they wanted to see this fireplace really badly, and they hoped that Varvara Bazanova would let them see, like, you know, arrange a tour from time to time for Italian visitors. But Maria Dillon said that this was not possible because Varvara Bazanova was a private person. And yes, she was. Just some more works by Maria Dillon. Very interesting artist, very talented, and I would say her works were a big game changer for a lot of women in the world of art. Look at this room. So look at all these decorations. A lot more whimsical creatures, winged creatures. So this is very whimsical Baroque. And as I said, it's all gold that glitters in St. Petersburg, so it was gilded. But this is not the most beautiful room to me, even though that fireplace is incredible. Look at this study. This is the upper study. Look at this fireplace. And the amazing is that the fireplace itself is not made from wood. It's made from the stone called labradorite. I don't know anything about stones, but I was told, and it's also written in the books on this house, that so labradorite is a good stone that can imitate wood. And just look at that. The wallpapers, well, the upholstery has not been preserved, however, but look at the ceiling. And the ceiling, well, it's wood, like everything else is wooden, and there's no doubt about it. But the fireplace, no, it's not. The knight in the middle section of the fireplace had a sword, used to have a sword. Then the sword went missing in the Soviet times, and it was never found again. Look at that. So again, coat of arms, Alexander Kelch. So that was the coat of arms of the Kelch family, and Baganova told well, felt it was absolutely necessary to place it in nearly every room. But also on the floor, on the ceiling, you can find many other carved details, a lot of tools, a lot of drawing tools, a lot of engineering tools, and some scholars believe that those, well, and they are, some of those tools are definitely Freemason symbols. So some claim that Kelch was a Freemason, which could easily have been the case, easily. Well, however, Kelch was not very good at managing Varvara's properties, finances, expenditures. Um, so whether he was a Freemason, I'm not sure. Well, we don't know. Again, it's in a mystery. We don't know. There was also another rumor that, well, as if Alexander Kelch was desperately in love with Barbara, and he had, let's say, helped his elder brother pass away so he could marry Barbara. Well, there were all sorts of theories, but these are just theories. But we know that Alexander liked billiards. That was one of his favorite rooms. And so we are told on the tour that this is the original uh, leather upholstery on the furniture, as well as all these wooden details, as well as the ceiling, the caisson, ceiling decoration, wooden ceiling. The table is, however, new. This is the photo I found online. It's not even my photograph. And look at this fireplace. This is already something more similar to where, well, something that's kind of say closer to Art Nouveau. The chandeliers are original. Obviously, when the house was built, it had electricity, it had everything. Well, it didn't have elevator. There was no need for an elevator though. But everything else they had. Gothic dining room. So this is my absolute favorite. Gothic dining room. Look at that. Well, that looks like Hogwarts to me. And all of this is original. Even the stained glass survived the Second World War. Again, I don't know about the stained glass on the in the staircase, right? On the roof of the staircase, but this stained glass has survived it all. So this is what we were told on the tour. This is what everyone says, and this is just absolutely incredible. Look at all this. So actually, this was the dining room. And well, the family was small and they didn't host too many guests, so they didn't really have big tables and like big gatherings in the house. So the house was quite small, but still they had a good number of servants, and the family would have dinners and lunches here in this room. The so this section, which looks like an altar, it was actually part of the pantry, and the lower section was part of the pantry, and the upper section was the place for the choir. Also, there was an organ. Why I said it looks like well, it looks like an altar. That's because on the upper section there was an organ. The stained glass was made in the best stained glass workshop in St. Petersburg, and it has been restored, but this is original. Still, it is still original, and I have no idea how they managed to preserve it, how it survived the war. This is a very good question. Um, Also, the planning of the house, the layout of the house was very convenient. So so you see over there, if I go a little bit to that side, hold on a second, maybe that's too much. Okay, let me try. Just want to show you something. So when I was there on a guided tour by my colleague, who is a lawyer. So you see that door. Sorry, it's a bit blurry, so it's not stopping. A leg was not taken to this room, but through this door, you actually can access the service rooms. And there was a big windowsill, probably one of the biggest windowsills in in St. Petersburg. It was very big, like in entire me could fit on that windowsill. I could easily sleep on that windowsill. And that windowsill was used to place the dishes for the parties. So for the dinners. So the servants would be coming through that service door. They would also put the dishes and the plates and everything on the windowsill, and they would be going back and forth. And there is a photograph of this porcelain uh, set. Oh no, not porcelain, silver set for 35 people, made by Carl Faberge. This was the biggest silver set ever created by by a Faberge company, and it cost 135,000 rubles. I remind you, the plot of land cost 300,000 rubles. Romanovs would normally pay Fabergé for one imperial egg about 1 to 2,000 rubles, which was a lot. Again, if you remember, 20 to 30 rubles, that was the very average salary in St. Petersburg for non-manual work. And, well, you kind of have the idea. But Fabergé also couldn't charge them a lot, but well, he charged Varvara Bazanova, I guess, the double. I don't know, but it was made from silver, and these were parts also of the set, table set. And Fabergé was, so there are records of it, and also people who were invited to the parties, they saw it, like it happened for the fact. There are documents, but when the revolution hit, uh, by that time the family had already separated, and they the the Fabergé silver table set was in Moscow. So the Moscow property was nationalized, and the silver was seized, and you have an idea, right? So Moscow Kremlin laid their hands on the silver, and up until quite recently, everyone used to think that they just decided to melt it and make silver coins because, oh well, silver because the country desperately needed money. But several years ago in Poland surfaced a couple of items such as the knife and well something else that was part of that silver set, which gives us hope. Maybe, just maybe, the Bolsheviks did not melt it. Maybe, just maybe, they decided to spare that work of art by V. Fabergé, and they just decided to sell it. And somewhere in private collection in Europe, they actually are using this tableware, the silverware on a daily basis. Who knows? The fireplaces are no longer functioning, as you can see, but they're still here. Again, the fireplace is labradorite. The rest is wood, the wooden panels, the wooden carvings, and again another coat of arms, and again another whimsical creatures, gargoyles, the unicorns, and so on and so forth. And of course, the knights. Of course, um, well, I guess she also liked a lot the Knight's Tales. It was the time also. It was the time, second half of the 19th century. Everyone was into this type of literature as well. So who knows? But so what happened to all the Fabergé? So as I said, they used to have 7 Fabergé eggs. So when she flipped and decided to leave for Paris, so she left her daughter with her husband, but she took all those seven Faberge eggs with her to Europe. By the way, you can go upstairs. Well, there's no organ there anymore, but you can go upstairs. I went upstairs, and I mean, look at this. That was just incredible, absolutely. So, and when she lived in Europe, obviously she went also with some other money, but after the revolution, the Russian money that she had in banks were no longer valid because the country ceased to be, and in Europe they would not be taken Russian rubles. So she started selling her Faberge eggs, and most of the Faberge eggs are still in Europe in private collections because Varvara Bazanova obviously she wanted to have a convenient and comfortable life in Europe. So she did that. And what happened to her husband here? So Alexander Kelch remained in Russia after the revolution. She married a woman. She was a kitchen maid. By the way, some photographs of the dining room, so you have an idea. But that table, by the way, it's a millipede table, so you can extend it. But we don't know of big parties. No, this place was not for big parties. So now we are in the private section on the upper floor. In this is the room with alcove, and next to the room with alcove was the bedroom of Varvara Bazanova. And when the revolution happened, so as I said, Alexander remained in the country. He couldn't find a job for a long time. He had to flee from Petrograd, during the First World War times and the first years of Soviet Union. It was Petrograd was the name of Saint Petersburg, and then Leningrad in the 1920s. So for some time it was Petrograd, and they were not allowed to stay because they were aristocrats. Everyone was after aristocrats, and everyone was no. Well, they were targets for sure. So they left. They for some time they worked in the south of Russia, and then he came to Leningrad, and he couldn't find a job. The only job he could find was the street cigarette vendor. Imagine Alexander Kelch at one point used to manage million worth estates of one of the richest women in the country, and then in a couple of years' time he would be selling cigarettes in the street and dying from hunger. Varvara Bazanova found him, and she knew about the hardships, so she sent him a letter asking him to come to. By that time, they had already been divorced, by the way, so they arranged a divorce while still living in separate countries. I don't know whether she really missed her child. That's a good question. We don't know that. No, nothing is mentioned about it. So there are, well, I don't know. Well, but she had her Faberge with her, so maybe that's kind of made her feel a little better. So she offered him to come to Paris, but he decided to stay. And this correspondence, by the way, this is the bedroom of Varvara Bazanova, and so in the middle there is there is the section. It's a separation, and in the end, over there behind the wall to the right, there was a bathtub. That was kind of a bathroom of Varvara Bazanova. Well, that part of the house did not survive, and that correspondence between Varvara and her ex-husband, oh, that made things go dire straits because eventually it became known to the Bolsheviks that Kelch was with the enemy state and everything. So he was put into prison, and Then we don't know what happened to him. It was, he just disappeared. By the way, this is the study of the head of this facility. It is located in that part of the house where the bathroom used to be. Nobody, well, tours are not taken there. This is just a photograph that I found. And also there was a restroom, so there was the sewage system and everything. So this was part of the restroom. Just imagine, it's just beautiful Art Nouveau-ish, well, I would say pretty Art Nouveau-ish designs. The tiles, well, I don't know what happened here. Look at the ceiling as well. So that was the private section. So bedroom, boudoir, bathroom, restroom of Varvara Bazanova Kelch. And there was also a study. Um, Also, these are the photographs I found online. And this was the study of Varvara Bazanova, her upper study. Now it's, I think, well, I haven't been to this room, so Alec was. It looked, by the way, it looked different than it looks now. I guess something was changed, but most of the details are still there, such as this panel above the door, all the wooden decorations. I guess this ship is still there, but I don't know if it's memorial. That's a good question. I have no idea. But um, also in this room, you may have seen the corner. Well, let me show you. Let me go back for a second. You may have noticed in the corner kind of an empty cupboard, right? Over there, you can see it. So many scholars claim that that's where Varvara Bazanova used to keep in her study. She used to keep her Faberge eggs in that study. But also there was found in the 2000s, there was found a secret safe, by the way. So you see by the fireplace, there is the bookcase. So you open the bookcase, and I was only told about it. I never saw it, but I found photographs also. So you open the doors of the bookcase, and then you pull one of the shelves, and it opens because these shelves actually happen to be the doors to a secret, well, kind of secret drawer or kind of a small secret chamber. And so we believe that this is where Varvara Bazanova kept her Faberge stuff, maybe even the eggs. So, or maybe she kept some of the, papers, obligations, cash. Who knows? So she had a lot of money. She had money in different banks all around Europe. But as I said, after the revolution, the money became well, cost nothing because the country ceased to exist. So she had to start selling the eggs. And these eggs, so let's talk about the 7 eggs that Varvara Bazanova used to have. Um, you may recognize this egg because it's in the Faberge Museum in Saint Petersburg, the hen egg. This was a homage to the egg that Alexander III gave to her wife, which was the first egg and the beginning of the story of the woman of Saint Faberge. And Varvara Bazanova also, well, she always had this, she always felt she wasn't good enough, she wasn't royal enough, she wasn't aristocrat enough. So she would very often ask to have similar eggs, well, to those that the Romanovs would be getting. And so she got that. So she asked for the hen egg from Karl Faberge. 1898, she had it. And the thing is that in the Faberge Museum, so Malcolm Forbes purchased it in Europe, right? Well, I mean, already in the States, he purchased it. So again, 1898. And in the present, there was the portrait of Tsarevich Alexei. He hadn't been born yet. So at some point, after Bazanova sold her Faberge eggs somewhere in Europe, so she stayed in Paris all the time, almost all the time, someone did a little work to up the price And Malcolm Forbes purchased it thinking it was the Romanov egg, most likely. But we now know that it was not the Romanov egg, but it was the Faberge egg. And so there you go, right? But 1898, David Alexei would be only, he would be born like in 6 years. So that was out of question, absolutely out of question. But you kind of have an idea. 12 panel egg. Look at this. So some claim that it was one of her favorite eggs, and it's also believed that it was the last egg Varvara Bazanova sold. But it's not so easy to verify. But you have the idea, and then you press it, and it would open up like flower with the petals. Yep. So another egg, the Rockile egg, also commissioned by her. It looks a little bit similar to one of the eggs that Romanov commissioned for Alexander Palace egg, for example, but it's not like what's going on? But it's um, it didn't copy any of the eggs, so it was quite a different one. So Rockeye, that's one of the later eggs that Varvara Bazarnova had. And well, look at the photographs. It's now in private hands. So we know of the whereabouts of all the 7 eggs. We know that the 2 are back to St. Petersburg, but the others are in the private collections in Europe and the US. It's the absolutely famous patterns, right, of the guilloche enamel, right? So this is one of the famous guilloche designs by Carl Faberge. Well, the Chanticleer egg, right? Kelch Chanticleer egg. It was inspired by the Chanticleer egg that was created to commission of Nicholas II for his mother, the Dowager Empress Maria Feodorovna. But that egg was a bit smaller and a little bit more of a reserved darker purple shade. But Varvara Bazanova had her egg way bigger in a brighter blue color. Well, it's like the same year after Nicholas II had his, and she was charged much more than Nicholas was. And again, so this is a much bigger egg. So it looks like Faberge loved Bazanova, well, for the money, but it looks like it's highly possible that she was his supplier as well. We don't know. Well, we just think it could have been the case. So it looks very similar to that egg that belonged to Maria Feodorovna. Just some more photographs that I found. Since this is a photograph from the Faberge Museum, maybe it's even from my camera roll. The pine cone Faberge egg, a unique one. So absolutely unique. The pine cone looks like the pine cone, and inside there is this present of the elephant. Uh, so this is a unique egg, and it's in the private collections. But it came with a present and everything. So the eggs of Varvara Bazanova, they are in perfect condition. They are in, well, okay, mint condition if you want. Apple blossom Faberge egg. I mean, the nephrite became a big fad in the 1900s. So the nephrite, silver, pink, diamonds, all that. Oof, oof. This one is in Liechtenstein, by the way. So also belonged to Varvara. It was created to her commission, and it would open horizontally like that. Amazing. Bonbonniere egg, 1903. This one is in Australia. There was a pendant inside and a small egg. I don't think I have a photo of the pendant, but we know what the presents were. So all those eggs that she sold were complete, unlike the collection of Malcolm Forbes. some presents were missing, as we know, and we don't have even the faintest idea of some of them looked like. So that's the photograph of that secret drawer of the secret chamber. So next in the study, next to the fireplace, you open the bookcase, you pull the drawer, the bookshelves, and there is this secret drawer. So I don't know. And this is kind of the table I prepared. So you see the years. She got the years. She got the eggs every year, and then she left for Europe. As I said, in 1904, she eventually left her husband and so too. So one of the eggs are in the well in the family of the widow of McDonald's. One in Liechtenstein, one in Australia, two in Saint Petersburg. So not so bad. I mean, could have been worse. And one, of course, was purchased by Charles himself. Yeah, just saying. Um, and there is one more room that and there's one more thing that I wanted to share with you. I know I'm overrunning, but I'm almost done, I promise. So, what happened to this house after the revolution? That's also another interesting story because in this building, in in 1920, opened the very first film school, cinema school in the world. The first, well, yes, you may be surprised, but it wasn't in Hollywood. The first cinema school, uh, for film school in the world opened in Moscow in 1919, and then the next year, the then an affiliate, kind of the St. Petersburg division, was opened in this house. And these are the students of the film school. Why was the Soviet Union the very first, what was the pioneer of the film making? That's because they knew from the very beginning that movies would be the best propaganda tools. These are the students of the film school, by the way. And this is one of the rooms that's also not really shown to public. I just saw photographs online. I have never been there. A leg was never there, and I just like the designs of the ceiling. They are actually 3D. Yeah. So this is it. Let's have the Q&A. Thank you everyone who who has had enough patience to join this tour and to wait till the end for the Faberge story and everything. So you kind of have an idea. And Lavara Bazanova lived a long life, and she's buried in the famous cemetery Saint Geneviève Beauvoir in Paris. So she was okay. She had enough till the end of her days. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. Thank you so much. And hi to all those who joined a little after we started. What a magnificent house. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Oleg. I only shared bits of my camera roll that I had. I really, it was like, yeah, sure, come in. I felt like I was spying, honestly. Like I was just kind of I felt like it was something I almost broke into the house. So I just had a little snippets of this and that. But well, Alec did all the job and he monitored. He monitored to make sure he wouldn't miss the notification from the company. Like all that, it's not really in all these stores. It's not a private initiative of this law school. Thank you, Joe. It was all done first of all by the initiative of the city hall, because St. Petersburg knows how everyone wants to see this house. So it's the city initiative. That was fun. Thank you so much, Marilyn. Wow, that was fun. Love the rooms, fantastic. Yes, and there are many more impressive buildings and impressive houses in the street. So once we're done with the St. Petersburg of Dostoevsky, I will need to make up for some of the dark alleyways and totally depressive courtyards, and I will take you to the street for a proper tour. And this is also the street where the famous Anna Kirche is, by the way. Yeah, so I'm sure you remember that tour I did around Christmas time in the beautiful, well, impressive Lutheran Church in Saint Petersburg. What a treat. So incredibly informative. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Maria, thank you so much. Another gem. The fireplaces are stunning. And the Faberge eggs, of course. Yeah, the Faberge story is amazing. So it's it's just like there's so many things are missing. Like we're missing really big parts of the puzzle. Was he a Freemason? Then did she meet the child? What happened to her? Was she okay? I mean, was she mentally okay? There are a lot of questions we don't know. And she was one of the richest women in the country. She really like lived. She could live on gold. She could have herself a golden, I don't know, golden everything. Yeah. So an amazing story. Amazing. Thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you those who have tipped me. It really means a lot to me. I hope I have been able to thank everyone. I do hope so. Well, and if not, I will thank you also in person. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your support. Also, the recording will be provided on my YouTube channel as usual. The recordings as of the previous weekend are still there, including my Tel Aviv live walks, including my Jerusalem tours. So there's going to be one more tour tonight in 50 minutes from now with World Virtual Tours. It's going to be Mary Magdalene Church in Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives built by the Romanovs, and it was kind of their Romanovs church in Jerusalem in many ways. And tomorrow I'm doing three tours. First is going to be a talk on Anton Chekhov. Sure, you know who he was. Then I'm taking you to another palace, this time in Tbilisi, Georgia. And this is the premiere because the palace opened to public also only this summer. No, well, I mean, the fall last year, even like September last year. We're going to be spending there quite some time. And there's interesting stories from the Romanov time, like early 19th century and up until Stalin times and the contemporary situation. And then Armenian Quarter of Jerusalem. So tomorrow is going to be a premiere. We've never really explored the Armenian Quarter together with you before, and it's not so easily accessible, but we are in for a treat tomorrow because I filmed the oldest Armenian ceramics workshop in Jerusalem, and Harut, who runs this place together with his brothers, he even let me film the backstage, well, the workshop itself. It's amazing. So I can't wait to take you there. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. I will pass on all this thanks to Oleg, of course. He has filmed so much for us. I mean, while I was filming like crazy in Israel, Oleg went out of his way to film a few more interesting locations. But I still need to work on that. But anyway, I will keep you posted. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your excitement because this is exciting, of course. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye. I'm going to take a photograph of all these. Thank you, Oleg, and send to him. See you, Marilyn. See you. And don't forget about the Jerusalem tour if it's something you're interested in, of course. But it's going to be a Romanov story, a lot of Romanov stuff. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. And Shavua Tov to all my Jewish friends. And have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.